Good morning, students. Today, History, Unit 7, Anti-Colonial Movements and the Birth of Nationalism. Yesterday and day before yesterday, Coal Revolts, Munda Rebellion, we saw. Today, the Great Revolt of 1857. The Great Revolt of 1857 was one of the important events that occurred in India. The Britishers were dominated the Indians. Indian people were under the control of British. So, the Indian historian says that the Great Revolt of 1857 was one of the first war of Indian independence. But the British historian says that it was one of the Great Revolt. The Sepoys of Indians says that it was one of the mutiny. In this lesson, we are going to see elaborately the Great Revolt of 1857. Listen here carefully, students. The causes for the Great Revolt of 1857. Annexation policy of British India. Under this topic, annexation policy, the Britishers were captured many places. The colonial movements were started. The colonies were captured by the British. The annexation policy, annex means capture. Many places were captured by the British during that time. They annexed Indian territories. More and more Indian territories annexed by the British. The doctrine of paramountcy. The Britishers thought that they were the superiors. But Indians were the inferiors, they thought that. Indians were inferiors. Inferior means lower in a position. The Britishers were higher in a position. Supreme. Paramountcy. Paramountcy means what? Higher in a position. The Britishers were supreme. The Indians were inept. Inept means tagudiyatra. There is no responsibilities were provided to the Indians during that time by the British. The Indian people were suffered a lot. Lot of sufferings on Indians. The doctrine of lapse. Listen here carefully, students. What you know about the doctrine of lapse? No? Doctrine of lapse means if the ruler died without male issue, the adopted son inherit only the personal property of the deceased. Once again, listen here carefully, students. If the ruler died without male issue, the adopted son only inherit the personal property of the deceased. This is known as doctrine of lapse. According to the doctrine of lapse, the Britishers annexed Satara, Sambalpur, Punjab, Jhansi and Nagpur. These places were captured by the British according to the doctrine of lapse. The ruler was no issue. Sensitivity to Indian cultural sentiments or the Vellore revolt of 1806. The Vellore revolt was started in 1806. The main causes for the Vellore revolt, what you know, students? Listen here carefully. The Britishers were dominated the Indians. The Hindus, the Britishers avoid to provide permission to the Hindus to smear the caste marks on their forehead. And the Muslims want to shave their beard and trim their moustaches. So, both Hindus and Muslims were resented on British because of Britishers ordered that the Hindus permission were not provided to the Hindus to smear the caste mark on their forehead, and the Muslims want to shave their beard and trim their moustaches. The Hindus mainly, they wanted to smear the caste mark on their forehead. They like that. It is one of the sacred one. But Muslims want to grow their beard and also moustaches. These are all prohibited to the both Hindus and Muslims. Both Hindus and Muslims resented on the British. And after that, in 1806, the Britishers introduced the new turban. The new turban is round in shape. Both Hindus and Muslims wanted to wear that turban, Agnew turban. The Agnew turban was prohibited both Hindus and Muslims. So, Britishers were suppressed the soldiers of the sepoys of the Indians. In 1824, the Britishers ordered the sepoys, Indian sepoys want to go abroad. They wanted to go overseas colonies. Particularly, they wanted to go to Burma. The Indian soldiers, sepoys, avoided to go overseas, abroad. After that, the higher posts were, all the higher posts were goes to British only. The British officers having the higher posts, they appointed the higher post. Indian sepoys provided only the lower post. The Indian sepoys, the top rank was Subedar. Subedar was the top rank of the Indians. But all the colonel and officers post, all the officers post goes to only the British. So, the Indian sepoys were angry against the British. The promotion were not provided. Only the Subedar was the lost grade of Indian sepoys. The promotion were prohibited to the Indian sepoys. So, Indian sepoys were resented on British. This is one of the cause for the Great Revolt. The Vellore Revolt was one of the prelude of the 1857 revolt, the Great Revolt. The revolt, immediate cause for the revolt. What you know, students? Listen here carefully. The Britishers were introduced the cottages. The new Enfield rifle cottages were introduced by the British. But in these cottages were greased cow and pig fat. Cow and pig fat were greased in that cottages. Both Hindus and Muslims want to use these cottages. The Hindu sacred animal, cow. The Muslims, pig was detestable. Cottages were greased, the cow and pig fat. Hindu sacred animal was cow, and the pig was detestable by the Muslims. So both Hindus and Muslims avoid to use these cottages. Before loading the cottages, the sepoys want to bite off that particular cottages. So these cottages were greased, the cow and pig fat. So both Hindus and Muslims were hesitant to use these cottages. So the cow was a sacred animal of Hindus and pig was detestable by the British. Detestable means verup. Sacred means punidamana. So both Hindus and Muslims were avoid to use these cottages. Mangal Pandey, the Barakpur regiment, from the Barakpur regiment, refused to use these cottages. When the sergeant forced the Mangal Pandey, he was shot him down. After that, Mangal Pandey was hanged by the British. In this news spread all over India. So, immediately many people were joined to the revolt. But Britishers were suppressed. This is the immediate cause for the Great Revolt. Bahadur Shah proclaimed as Emperor of Hindustan. On 11th May 1857, sepoys from Meerut marched to Red Fort, Delhi. They declared that Indian sepoys declared that Bahadur Shah II was the Mughal Emperor. Bahadur Shah II was their leader. They declared that. Initially, the Britishers were not accepted. But later, the Britishers also, this offer was accepted. He was known as, Bahadur Shah II was known as Shah-in-Shah-e Hindustan. Popularly known as Shah-in-Shah-e Hindustan. Students, listen here. Once again, I am going to recall the Great Revolt of 1857. Causes for the Great Revolt. annexation policy of British India. Many places were annexed by the British in our country. Many territories were captured by the British. The doctrine of paramountcy. The doctrine of paramountcy, the Britishers were the superior of the superior. The Indians were the inferior. They thought that. So, the Indian peoples were inept for all the works. Inept means tagudiyatra, already told you. Noting. The Britishers were the paramountcy. Paramountcy. Supreme. The Indians were inferiors. Third, Mattaman. They treated inferior races. The doctrine of lapse. According to the doctrine of lapse, what do you know of the doctrine of lapse, students? Already told you know. Listen here. If the ruler died without male issue, the adopted son only the inherit of personal property of the deceased. According to that, many places without male heir, the ruler were died. In that places were known as Satara, Sambalpur, Punjab, Jhansi and Nagpur. These are all captured by the British, annexed by the British. Insensitivity to Indian cultural sentiment. The Vellore revolt of 1806. In the 1806 Vellore revolt were started. The main cause for the Vellore revolt what, students? Already told you know. Yes, listen here. The Indians prohibited to smear the caste mark on their forehead, and the Muslims want to shave their beard and trim their mustaches. Both Hindus and the Muslims were angry against the British because of the Hindus. Caste mark was the sacred of Hindus, and the Muslims want to grow their beard and the mustaches. Both these are all prohibited by the British. So both Hindus and Muslims were resented on the British. Noted. Resented means angry against the British. Noted. And finally, in the Vellore revolt of 1806, they introduced Agnew turban. Agnew turban was introduced by the British. All the Sipais want to wear that turban. Many Sipais were avoided to use this turban. It is in round in shape like that. Agnew turban. In 1824, the Britishers were ordered. All the Sipais want to go overseas colonies, particularly the Burma. But Indians were avoided to go overseas from India. The salary were very low compared to the British. Indian Sipais' salary were very low. Lower salary only provided. And also, there is no promotion for Indian Sipais. All the higher posts goes to only the British. The lower post only provided to the Indian Sipais. The Subedar was the higher post for Indians. So, the Indian Sipais were very angry against the British. The revolt. The immediate cause for the Great Revolt. The Britishers were introduced new Enfield rifle cartridges. These cartridges were greased cow and pig fat. both the Hindus and Muslims, before loading these cartridges, they wanted to bite off the cartridges. The cow was the sacred of the Hindus, and pig was detestable by the Muslims. Pig was detestable by the Muslims. So both Hindus and Muslims avoided to use these cartridges. But Britishers forced both Hindus and Muslims to use these cartridges. At Barakpur, the Indian Sipai, Brahmin Sipai, Mangal Pandey refused to use these cartridges. When the British surgeon forced him, but he was shot him down. After that, the Mangal Pandey was hanged by the British. In this news spread all over the country, India. So many people, many places where revolt were started. Many people were participated in this great revolt. Bahadur Shah proclaimed as Emperor of Hindustan on 11th May 1857. Sipais from Meerut marched to Delhi, Red Fort. They proclaimed that, Sipais proclaimed that Bahadur Shah II was the Mughal emperor. Bahadur Shah II was their leader, emperor. They choose Bahadur Shah II. The Mughal emperor was the leader. Initially, the Britishers were avoided to accept, are not accepted. But finally, they were accepted. The favor of the Hindus, and also he was known as Shah-e Hindustan. The Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah II, popularly known as Shah-e Hindustan. Okay then, see you tomorrow, students.